Welcome back to another DC Thursday. This week we're working on Superman. This is not my most favorite illustration that I've done. I don't quite feel like I nailed the face for Superman. He looks a little bit more like Bizarro than he does Superman in the face. It just looks a little bit off. The pencil was okay. The inking, I lost a little bit of the aesthetic that is Superman, and the colors are really far off. But I figured I would still post this anyway because it's a good way to show that not everything you draw is going to be perfect, that you're going to like everything about it. I think the inking turned out okay, but the overall face and proportions, it just everything looks a little bit off. But it's still something that you can learn from as you go forward with your own drawings, that sometimes not everything's going to be perfect. So in this illustration, say we're working on Superman, I figured I'd throw in some of my favorite artists that I enjoy that's worked on Superman. Number one being Neal Adams. You'll hear Neal Adams' name pop up throughout some of these series just because I think he nails a lot of the aesthetics and looks for some of these characters. It's the anatomy's always solid, the shading's always really good, and he can switch up and adjust the style as he needs based off of the time period that he's drawing them in. I always felt like he did a really good job with his colors, the inks, and sometimes adding it in. I don't know how much that's the colorist and how much is him drawing the characters out and figuring out what works and what he doesn't like for them, but to me, he always just kind of nails the Superman aesthetics that I didn't quite get in this illustration. I've never actually drawn Superman before, which is probably why I didn't quite nail this. Anytime you draw a character for the first time, it never turns out how you want it to. Whether you don't quite get the aesthetic, you don't quite get the face right, you don't quite nail the. Like, Superman has a certain look and feel to him that you have to nail the hair and the face, and I wasn't anywhere close to it in this illustration. My next favorite Superman artist is Bruce Timm. I feel like he nails that classic Golden Age era Superman look. I also think it's because the first interactions I ever had really with Superman was the animated series that he'd worked on, simultaneously as I believe he was working on the Batman animated series. I always felt like he just kind of nails that Jack Kirby-esque look, but in a cartoon format. I do think that, to me, he still has the best storytelling for Superman between the animated series, which wasn't as good as Batman, but it nailed the Superman aesthetics and feel. But when he moved into the Ultimate Justice League and regular Justice League stories, he put a lot of thought into what stories to use from the comics. One of my favorite stories that were told in there, I didn't realize it was a comic book till afterwards, is the Mongol story where he sends Superman a birthday gift where he gives him, I think it's like, I forget the name of the alien, but it's like a star formation. It sits on his chest or on the face, and it gives you your ultimate reality. That goes in the animated series. He did a really good job with that. The comic was, I found out later, was really well done too, but the first time I ever saw it was the animated series. The animated series did a lot of firsts in terms of storytelling for me for Superman, which is where I get most of my information from. I've read a few Superman books. My favorite ones are the offshoot ones that no one really talks about, like him dressing up as a boxer to help some old beat up boxer get back into the ring and evening the odds against some kind of corrupt. I think it's supposed to be mafia. I can't remember, but those are always my favorite Superman stories. I find when he does the fantasy and galaxy related stories, they're not bad. It's just you always expect him to win because he's so powerful. It's kind of what makes him somewhat of a boring character, is the fact that he's so powerful and no one really seems to be able to stand toe to toe with him. And even the people that do, it's like he just kind of stops holding back and he just kind of mops the floor with them. It's what makes him a little bit of a boring character, but again, as overall part of DC, he at one point was probably the most popular DC character out there, and then slowly, as times changed, he was replaced by Batman, who's probably number two in terms, maybe even number three at this point, as the most popular uh, North American comic. Second, maybe to Spider-Man. I see some people would say maybe even third to Wolverine or Daredevil. not Daredevil, Deadpool, just because of the movies. I don't know if that's quite accurate. I still think he's probably number two, and he probably goes back and forth with Spider-Man for number one. But that's just my opinion. So we're just kind of cruising along right now into the inks. I do think that some of the inking for this turned out okay. Maybe I used a little bit too much black just because it is Superman, but I did draw the Batman character before this, so maybe that's why I ended up doing it this way. I did add a little bit more feathering and things of that nature to this piece, which I do think I got a better control of when I started to do this. The lasso trick does help, and I'll probably start freehanding it a little bit more, but I do think that this, again, was not my best work. But I figured I would post it because I feel like a lot of people only post their successes instead of sometimes their failures. And sometimes you learn the most from your failures than you will from your successes, in my opinion. I don't know what it was, but I could not get this knee to look right. I ended up drawing it multiple times and trying to figure out where it was going wrong, and I couldn't find a reference for what I was looking for the knee, and I ended up just kind of guessing at it, which I wouldn't really suggest. I could not get the S curl shoot type of look for the hair, which also didn't help. I don't know what it was, I just could not seem to get this illustration to turn out how I wanted it to. I came close a few times, and then I just... So now we're on to the last part, which is adding in the shadows and adding in some more rendering with the colors. With coloring, I don't quite think I picked the right color for the blue. I think it should have been a little bit lighter, and a little bit lighter for the shadows. I think everything ended up being a little too dark, and ended up being a little bit muddy. And that, or I didn't quite add enough highlights to it. I'm not 100% sure exactly where it all went wrong for this, but it just didn't turn out how I wanted it to. Even the stomach area around where the belt is, it kind of gets lost behind the arm. I kind of wish I had rather drawn the arm a little differently. Maybe a bit more planning would have helped. I don't quite know where everything just went wrong for this character. Just everything works just a little bit off, and I kind of wish I could figure out where I went wrong. I'll have to sit down once this is all finished and give myself a self-critique. If you guys ever want to watch or see something like that, let me know, and maybe I'll record a video of it. But anyone who's never done it, doing a self-critique is a good way to figure out where you went wrong and where you could have made improvements, and pointing out what you did okay. I think this character will be a perfect example of that. I think that there are certain things, like I didn't draw the hands, but you don't always need to for like a pin-up shot, which is kind of what this is. It doesn't really add anything. It does make it look more complete, but I do think you can get away without drawing them for something like this. I think one, the next character will be somewhat similar, where I'll sit down and have to do a self-critique for that as well, because it didn't quite turn out exactly how I wanted it to. Just like I think going forward, we'll plan the eyes out a little bit better with the penciling stage before I jump into the colors. But that's all for this one. That's all for this week. I'll give you a sneak peek at the next illustration for next DC's Thursday. Let me know who you think it is in the comments below. See you next week.